Hi there, folks. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to tackle a very controversial subject here. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack from my African brothers and sisters. And this is the case against Lumumba. And this is not the Patrick Lumumba of the Congo that you know, the freedom fighter of the Congo. It's another megaloman, intellectual, orator, Kenyan probably Professor Patrick Lumumba, who has got a lot of videos online, speaking at universities, talking to many media, etc., etc. So this is a different from Patrick Lumumba that we know in Patrice Emery Lumumba that we know in Congo. So please bear with me and understand that nuance. That's a different Patrice Lumumba, and that's the guy you see on the screen. As I said, I know it's going to be a bit of a noise. It's going to be a bit of a critic that we need to make as African, because one other thing we have, and that's one thing against him, is that as Africans, we often don't criticize ourselves enough, and in that case, we fall into some traps of sort of self-gratification and self-infatuation. So let's get rolling, and you will see what I'm talking about.
What is happening in the Sahel with Burkina, with Niger, with Mali is unprecedented. We have young people who have gotten into power.
First of all, what's happening in those three countries is not unprecedented. We have had coup d'etat before. From Congo to Rwanda to Uganda to all countries that were French colonies, there have always been coup. There's nothing unprecedented about it. But let us continue listening.
Through extraordinary means, what is happening in the Sahel with Burkina, with Niger, with Mali is unprecedented.
Look at the smile.
Young people who have gotten into power through extraordinary means, which are under...
Okay, it's through extraordinary means. There was nothing extraordinary. A coup d'etat is not extraordinary. It's something that is very familiar, especially within the African continent, the Francophone Africa. A coup d'etat is nothing extraordinary. In my youth, I saw at least 4 of those, and I was under 25. Sorry, 4 coup d'etats. We knew there were more in Uganda. Museveni came after a coup. In Rwanda, it's not a coup as such, but there have been coups as well. In Congo, all the Congos, in Togo, in Benin, anywhere in African, Francophone Africa, coup d'etats are not unprecedented. They are not extraordinary. They are rather the norm for change of power in that part of Africa.
Understandable. And they are saying that our resources must now be used for the benefit of our people.
Now, saying understandable, I mean, you have to make a difference between an activist and an intellectual. When you are an intellectual, a professor, we expect you to go deeper. We expect you to question motives. You cannot just go with the current wave. I know it's popular to praise those countries as an Africanist, as an activist, but if I was a political professor, I would probably go deeper and just check, could things be different in Mali? Even in Burkina Faso, are human rights being respected? All these things. Again, I'm not saying those things aren't, but I'm pretty sure he didn't dig deep. He just went with the floor. This is what is expected. This is what is good to hear to the ears. Let me just ride the wave. And that makes you popular, but doesn't make you analytical. Sometimes when you are analytical, you even become unpopular. Okay, let's continue. And I'm going to probably jump up and down because I want to go straight to some of the things that are important to this discussion. But let's start.
And that is the way to go.
Okay, that shouldn't be the way to go. Things should be politically election, not a coup d'etat. Coup d'etats are never the way to go. So he could say that's
Hey there, and welcome to Fanya Mambo Africa. It's always an exciting time, and today it's more exciting because we have one of the most vocal Pan-Africanists.
Tunga were denied entry into Tanzania. They did not.
Among others, deported, and of course, Boniface Mwangi, who was tortured and dropped somewhere at the border. When you see such...
Now, I'm not familiar with this beef going on in East Africa between Kenya and its neighbors of Uganda and Tanzania, but there is one thing I want to focus on this gentleman. That rest is very important.
Things happening from our neighbor state. What is your take on that, and why would that have happened actually?
First of all, let us use terminology correctly. In my understanding, Martha Karua and Dr. Willie Mutunga were denied entry into Tanzania. They did not actually get into Tanzanian soil. That is denial of entry. And I speak as one who has been denied entry. In 2018, I was denied.
Okay, I'm throwing down here because we want to understand how in that term he was denied entry.
Entry into Zambia.
Into Zambia.
During the administration of President Lungu. And if you look at the news, the then Vice President Winner did actually issue a statement saying that I was denied entry for security reasons. I was not deported. I was then interviewed myself, and this is the position that I took, that if in the interpretation of the administration of President Lungu, I am a threat to security, then they must do what they must. And I must accept it whether I like it or not.
Okay, again, this is a weak political position to take. You want to go to Zambia, you are not armed, you are not starting a rebellion, you know you're not a threat to the security of Zambia, but if by the interpretation of the politicians, they think you are a threat, then you should be denied, and it is acceptable. That's a very low bar on a political assessment. If you want to go to a country and maybe politicians don't want to hear what you have to say, which is normal in Africa when you're talking against the power, and they refuse you over national security pretenses, you should speak out. You should say, I wasn't a security threat. What I was going to do was interpreted as a national security issue. I was invited at the University of Zambia. I was about to talk about religions or post-colonialism or how to be a good leader, or unless you were going to start rebellion, Mr. Lumumba, then tell us about that. But otherwise, you're not gonna let a politician decide whether or interpret your presence as a security threat. So you should question those things as a political respected commentators. Otherwise, as I said, you're just kissing butts, to be honest, just to ride the wave of popularity. You don't want to question those sort of, how can I call them, so sort of authoritarianism in Africa, where a president and a vice president will refuse you entry just because they don't like what you have to say. That's probably interesting take.
And that, I think, is how we should behave. Why? Because every country has its own laws and how they interpret threats to security. Those interpretations may be unreasonable. We may not like them. They may harm our ego, but that is their interpretation.
So those interpretations may be unreasonable, but it's fine. It's fine. It's a president in Africa. They can interpret anything. They can be unreasonable. It's their interpretation. It's okay. We must respect that. Okay.
In the case of the two individuals who are admitted into Tanzania, that is Boniface Mwangi and the lady from Uganda, allegations have been made about torture. And I speak as a lawyer would. Allegations have been made, and we have seen them coming into the country in ways that are not normal. It is incumbent upon the government of the United Republic of Tanzania to institute investigations to ensure that those who may have perpetrated such acts are dealt with in accordance with the law. And it is not lost on me that, in fact, the government of the Republic of Kenya did, in fact, write to the government of the United Republic of Tanzania to give access to Boniface Mwangi. And it is the day after that was done that he was actually released and dropped on the border between Kenya and Tanzania. But when one is dealing with matters of sovereignty and one is dealing with sensitive matters such as these, I think it is important that one is not quick to jump to conclusions.
Also, matter of security and of immigration, I would think there are departments, there are ministries that are dealing with that. I do know here there are times where somebody is prohibited from coming to this country and the buck stops by the minister of immigration, not the prime minister. Now, it's like the president of the Republic of Kenya and the president of the Republic of Tanzania are talking about matters of immigration and the matters of national of security. There should probably be instances or institutions, the Security Council, the Federal Investigation Bureau, whatever they have there, that would be dealing at that low level in the first place before presidents to intervene. Okay, that's not Lumumba to do, but he could probably pick that up as well, that we didn't really need, if there's a foreign policy, there'll be ministries of foreign policies getting involved, and this would solve that issue before the president get called in. But yeah.
I am aware and I've participated in cases where individuals from other countries are allowed to observe trials, particularly when those trials have political connotations, as in the case between the Republic of Tanzania and Tundu Lissu. But the question is, how do you do it? Does the government of the Republic of Tanzania, or did the government of the Republic of Tanzania expect the individuals to make an application through the right channels, whether those channels are through the Chief Justice of the Republic of Tanzania, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or the Office of the Attorney General, before they traveled? Remember, there is another Kenyan who was allowed to attend court, the former Chief Justice Maraga.
Quickly move
what
ahead
avenue
with
did
this
he
one
follow?
Because I said it's not a case we are familiar with, but I picked up what I picked up and we can move to the next one. So I'm going to be jumping from topic to topic. I took this randomly, so I might just be a bit erratic, but I will show you like the flaws in these respected African intellectual reasoning and the political conversations. Now, let me go. I have got the titles in front of me. Not sure if you can see these. I think you can, yes. So we have got, he's talking about why East Africa's integration keeps failing, the problem with the Kenya's diplomacy, U.S. AFRICOM's roles in East African security, Sahel. So I just want to talk about the Sahel. I think that's the subject that kind of interested me, because that was the introduction, and see what he thinks of the Sahel region, and if he's just riding the wave of popularity. Now, I know for views, it is good for me as a YouTuber to go there, or Sankara or Muhammad Ali and those people. But when you're a politician or a political analyst or a respected professor, you have to go deeper and see flaws where they are, that way the average person isn't seeing, because we are too enthusiastic about those captains in the army.
Taxpayers' money to create security in this region.
You know what's interesting is that the same general was against Burkina Faso's president Ibrahim Traore.
Taxpayers' money to create security in this region.
You know what's interesting is that the same general was against Burkina Faso's president Ibrahim Traore and saying that he's actually using gold money for his personal interests rather than the nation.
Before that the leaders say that there would be so much trouble and disturbance if we tried to interfere with these boundaries. That is how the doctrine of inviolability of inherited boundaries came about. And it was very well articulated by the leaders of the day, including greats such as Kwame Nkrumah, Gamal Abdel Nasser, and Julius Kambarage Nyerere. The understanding, of course, was that we would be moving towards integration, and that those boundaries would only be useful for purposes of administration, not as places where we would station our armed young men and women to kill each other. So going forward, I think that matters of security in East Africa should be the domain of the East African countries. And if there is any dispute, they should be addressed as such. And you will remember that even in Somalia, we have had Kenyan forces doing a reasonably good job. We have had Burundians, we have had Ugandans, which sends the message that we are capable of putting boots on the ground for the sake of our brothers and sisters. And the sooner we do that effectively, the more we will be respected. It should not take the United States of America and their taxpayers' money to create security in this region.
I think I'll give him this. So if we look at the title, I think he's talking about the United States with their African mission coming to Africa for security, and saying, we should step in as Africans and defend our borders and our neighbors. Fine. Okay, I give you this, Professor Lumumba.
You know what's interesting is that the same general was against Burkina Faso's president Ibrahim Traore and saying that he's actually using gold money for his personal interests rather than the nation. While essentially what Traore has done is to make his nation sovereign and let it work for its own. So when he speaks that about Burkina Faso, but then for East Africa the talk is different.
No,
what's the message?
They speak with both sides of the mouth. and that is what I call diplomatic schizophrenia, because they are split personalities. What is happening in the Sahel with Burkina, with Niger, with Mali is unprecedented.
Okay, I think you have heard this in the introduction. There is absolutely nothing unprecedented in that region. We have heard the coup d'etat before, and each coup d'etat promised change, promised sovereignty, promised new things. You can even go on the internet right now. We see people messages and the speeches of people who made the coup. On the day of the coup, they promised a different country, a different nation, and nothing actually did change. Actually, over time, what happened, most of those people, they also tended to be dictatorial. And I will tell you how. Mainly because they think they've got a cause so important you can't question them. So anybody questioning them is oppressed, because either he's an idiot, or he's working for the colonizers, or he's a traitor. So they don't take any advice contrary to what they are on the path of doing. And then they start sort of repressing other ideas. In a democracy or in a functional economy, there is this exchange of ideas. But then there will be some paranoia around. Is this guy's intention? Everybody's intention is questioned, and there starts a sort of a protectionism of the leader, and we simply or slowly ascend in some sort of authoritarianism. Mark my word.
We have young people who have gotten into power through extraordinary means, which are...
What's extraordinary about the coup in Francophone Africa? As we speak now, there might be some coups happening or being sorted in one way or another. Nothing is surrounding Professor Lumumba. It's extraordinary would be, what would be extraordinary in Africa? Like, it could definitely not one of those. I would probably think Senegal, the way that young men went into power, I would probably call that extraordinary. A young guy from nowhere into the political arena, no experience whatsoever, and the election was very snappy and he won. I would probably call that election in Senegal more extraordinary than a normal coup that we are familiar with, all of us.
Understandable. And they are saying that our resources must now be used for the benefit of our people. And that is the way to go. This is the kind of thing that we want to see done. Of course, when you are doing the right thing, which is not in the best interest of the conceptual West, you'll be called many names. You'll be called a dictator. You'll be called many names.
Listen. This also nationalistic slogan, we've seen it. When Mobutu came to power, he said, we're going to get rid of everything colonization. Matter of fact, he changed the things. He changed the currency. He changed the river Zaire into Zaire. He changed the country into Zaire. He said anybody who is going to be caught with a name like Patrice or Maurice or Catherine or George will be prosecuted. We are Zairians. We not. Have you seen a Jewish calling his name, calling his daughter or son? I don't know, Mazembe. So we all gonna be. So starting by me, I'm no longer Joseph Mobutu. I'm Mobutu Sese Seko Mwendo wa Zabanga, and every Zairian had 2 Zairian names. But behind the scenes, the thug was actually apparently an FBI or CIA agent and was sending all the wealth of Congo in the West. So spare me that. Give them time. And it's good to give them the benefit of the doubt, but you shouldn't start to dance before the song ends. Okay, let's go.
So let us brace for that and let's wear our seatbelts. That anybody who tries to do the right thing, and Samora Moises Machel said it very well, that when you see any European power singing the praises of an African leader, you must ask yourself what that leader is doing against his or her people.
Something else we have seen that is...
That too is a misleading statement. We Western countries have got their interests, that's true, but at the same time they have praised dictators who were against their people, the case of Museveni, the case of Mobutu before he falls, but at the same time they've also been against leaders who were for their people, or for and against leaders who were for or against their people. It's just a mixed feeling. Mainly it's that their interests are not served. And I don't think our interests should be opposite. It should be, sometimes the Western interest could align with the African interest. We don't know. But at the same time, I mean, Julius Nyerere, excuse me, Nelson Mandela, like the highest, the most respected leader in Africa is Nelson Mandela. Don't tell me that Nelson Mandela wasn't doing good for Africa or for Africans in South Africa. Don't tell me that, because then I'll question all my history knowledge. Julius Nyerere was actually popular with the West, but he wasn't doing anything against the people of Tanzania. Robert Mugabe, prior to the 90s, he was very popular. He probably got even a PhDs in European or UK universities, but he wasn't necessarily doing anything against the Zimbabwean people, except probably the massacres in during the Battle of Independence in Bulawayo or on the Belly Land. But I digress. But so you can't just, as a professor, as I said, the bar is high. I'm an activist. I'm a small guy. I never did one history 101 and don't have a platform. But I would expect a professor to be a deep thinker, not just riding the wave of popularity that we are riding for views or just for clout or just to feel a bit of warmy, fuzzy feeling.
You know, this week has had a lot of interesting diplomatic affairs. The IMF is now calling President Ruto to stop charging the lower cadre of citizens this share amounts and just a result to, let them, because they can't fund that. The amount of money they make is too low. So now when we have this general saying this, then we have IMF saying this. What does that mean about Kenya, and why is then Kenya so important for them?
Whenever I listen to the rhetoric from the Bretton Woods institutions as presently constituted IMF, World Bank, I laugh because they are not interested in the best interest of African countries. It is these same institutions who in the 1980s came up with one-size-fits-all prescriptions, structural adjustment. We have never recovered from structural adjustment. Of course, occasionally they say the right things. If I would agree with them. We have a saying in Kiswahili, mgala muue lakini haki yake mpe, obaniani mbaya kiatu chake dawa. It means that those who are in the business of doing bad things, occasionally they may even produce good results too. Under the colonial tutelage of the British and Somalia, which was under the tutelage of the Italians, they federated. It would appear that the wedding did not go very well, and in the 1900s and 1990s there was a war, and the reality on the ground as we speak is that there is a government in Hargeisa, which is Somaliland.
Okay, I'm going to jump onto this Ramaphosa mask Trump. I'm jumping to these stories I'm very familiar with, because I'm just making a bit of a critique of a high-level profile individual. So let's go.
Responsibilities, and when people don't live up to those responsibilities, you punish them in accordance with the law. My prayer and hope is that these will be revised and that Harvard University will have the freedom that it enjoys to accommodate students from different parts of the world. It is important even for students in the United States of America.
True. What do you make of Trump's visit to Middle East, and especially a meeting in Syria, and how it affects the global politics?
The Middle East, perhaps not the Middle East, but there is something happening in the Gulf. Whether one likes it or not, whether you are talking about the Emiratis, you are talking about the Omanis, you are talking about the Qataris, you are talking about the Saudis, there is something happening there. They have some emerging power that the world is being attracted. Remember that peace negotiations, whether it's between Russia and Kiev administration in Ukraine, have been held there in that part of the world. Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have also had negotiations there. And we have seen in the recent past that I think it is the Saudis and the Qataris.
Okay, now he's talking the imagined power. I think when it comes to negotiation, what is important is a sort of a sense of neutrality. Now, the Middle East has got a kind of standoff leaders, so they have got oil. They will need the oil, so they don't get told what to do. So they don't take the Russian side necessarily, but they don't take orders from the United States either. So they can kind of be independent. They don't need any aid from anyone. So those are good candidates for any form of negotiation, because you wouldn't call France to intervene between Ukraine and Russia, because the Russians will say, but the French are attacking us. You wouldn't call, Who else would you call? Because you either with Russia or you are with Ukraine. In that case, you're not a candidate for negotiation. So they pick some sort of a neutral player. And that probably happens with the Middle East conflict as well. But also they have got a power. We can listen to them. We listen to somebody with the power, which was the Petro. I said that they manage with the integrity in a way that is beneficial to their country and make them look big. If you tell them, let's go negotiate in Congo, they will laugh at you. They'll say, oh, the Congolese have got their own issues. If you say, let's go negotiate in Zambia, the Zambia will say, where is Zambia? So they have got the oil, they've got the power, but also they play a sort of a neutral game in this East-West conflict we often see now and then. So they are good candidates for the majority of conflict negotiations.
Who paid off the debts of Syria. So what one sees, that there is also a contest there, particularly in Syria. See that Syria was seen as being pro-Russia during the Bashar al-Assad administration. The new administration is now being seen as capable of being wooed to come into the American and European orbit, and they are being promised all manner of things. So those visits by several of his senior officials, including Mark Rubio, including the president himself, going to Qatar, is indicative of the reality that there is an unspoken battle of a diplomatic nature, which is designed from where I sit to ensure that Beijing and Moscow do not have influence in that region.
Does it in any way also affect what he said about the president of Russia yesterday, I think?
Okay, that's also a kind of activistic sort of analysis. I mean, the Middle East has always been of an interest to the United States. They never stopped sending envoys in the Middle East. I don't know that relationship to start with that exists with Israel. So they need to be there just to protect Israel. But also they play a big role in the oil supply, and that's where probably they fit in. And we have always seen the American administration, the first thing to do is to go kiss rings, I should say, with the Saudis especially. Yes, there are security interests there. There are economic interests. There are shipment routes interest. But Russia and China, for some reasons, are also partners of that region, which is why I say they don't play sides. They say, we have got the oil. The Russians, the Chinese particularly need oil. We're going to give them oil. Americans need oil. We're going to give them oil. They don't necessarily fall in the US or the West orbit. Yes, there are always these alliances that are stronger one side or the other, but that's not a sort of a coin or black and white sort of thing. You'll be surprised that as Marco Rubio just leaves the Emirates or whatever other state, Xi Jinping will be moving there, or that same emirate will be going to China for some other meeting. So it's not either or for those countries. They don't have to choose a side. They play both because they have got what we all need.
On his Truth social space, that that Trump's presence has helped him survive a lot of other things, bad things that could have happened for Moscow?
Speculation once again, and the Trump administration is just slightly over 100 days. And I think that whether you like it or not, the administration in Russia is one that has survived many things. And remember that Putin himself has been around for quite some time.
Yeah.
So I think he's sufficiently agile to survive many things without being helped in the manner that somebody would want to say he's helped. That would be my interpretation. So it's not as straightforward that because, therefore, I think it is a lot more nuanced.
Okay. Very interesting. Back home, before we come to the end, we have seen a lot of debate happening with the movement of the public seal from the AG's office to State House, back again from the government spokesperson saying, actually, no, it did not move, it's back in AG's office. What does the Constitution say about that? And then why would we have that confusion?
You know, first of all, it is a debate that
Okay,
we
I'm not
ought
going to
not
make this video very long, but I just wanted to say, and I just took this just to test myself and my analytical skills, but I wanted to open a debate, a controversy that in Africa, the first thing, we've got a lot of people who talk and a few people who act. So they all talk. They go to universities, they go everywhere and they talk. So you have to check, are they making a difference? Because we've had these orators since the beginning of times, but they're not actually doing anything active. Matter of fact, a guy like this who thinks that every single African government can decide what's and what's not in the interest, in the security of their country, is going to excuse any opposition leader being jailed because the president has decided that opposition leader is a national threat, a security threat. So we need to always be questioning these people the same way we should be questioning our leaders and uplift the bar a little bit higher. If he was to be refused entry into England, I'm pretty sure he would complain that England has refused him entry because he's from Kenya, because he's black, or blah, 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 blah. But he goes to an African country, they say, no, you can't come because national security. They say, but how can you demonstrate? No, they say, just whatever interpretation the leaders have decided, I have to accept and bow. That's what has been actually the story of Africa since before independence, I should say. Okay, folks, I know this is going to be controversial, and as you can see, I was just going through different places just because I was to test my own negotiation or critical skills. Okay, thank you very much. Please leave some comment, and I'm happy you criticize me, criticizing Lumumba, criticizing Zambia. It can go on and on forever. Okay, take care.